Okay, let's unpack this deep dive. We've got a really fascinating stack of sources here, all detailing the journey of this talk show, GCT Talks.
Yeah, and they're not just dry reports, are they? These are reflections,
No.
articles. Sounds like people who are really in the thick of it,
Yeah?
mapping out how it evolved, the operations, even what's next.
Exactly. And our mission really is to dig into that story, pull out the key insights, the lessons learned. It takes us right from the pandemic beginnings in 2020,
hmm
all the way through to a planned comeback for 2024.
And what I find really compelling is how relatable the challenges are. Anyone who's ever tried to launch something, anything really,
Oh, yeah.
will recognize these hurdles. Managing signups, scheduling people across the globe, those frustrating little things like typos,
The poster panic they mentioned.
right? And grappling with, viewership not being quite what you hoped for.
But here's where it gets, I think, really interesting. The sources hint pretty strongly that the way they dealt with all this,
Mhm.
their whole journey, it actually maps onto some bigger organizational leadership principles, stuff you might hear about from places like Amazon, or even echoes of, say, Netflix's culture.
Precisely. It
Well,
stops being just about one talk show and becomes this case study. Building from scratch, adapting on the fly, striving for excellence, even when resources are tight.
and learning constantly.
Absolutely. It just highlights how universal these operational challenges are, and we get a peek into how this one group tackled them.
So let's rewind back to the beginning, 2020. Chaos reigns.
That's the context, yeah. The pandemic hits, and suddenly there's this massive need, this drive to connect people who are physically apart.
Right.
And the inspiration, according to the sources, partly came from that TED City 2.0 ideal.
Okay.
Using tech to bridge distances, share stories globally, the cloud became like essential connective tissue.
And how did they actually kick it off? Something pretty simple, wasn't it?
Just an online forum, launched June 2020.
Yeah.
But wow, it obviously tapped into something immediately.
How many people signed up?
Over 40 aspiring speakers right out of the gate.
Yeah.
People eager to share.
40. Okay, that's fantastic enthusiasm, but uh-oh. My logistical brain is already hurting. How did they manage scheduling 40 people with just a form, especially globally?
Well, managed might be generous initially. The sources describe it pretty vividly as random calls.
Random call, seriously.
Yep, just trying to phone people up and slot them in. You can imagine the mess.
Oh, I can. A total headache. What else went sideways early on?
That poster panic you mentioned. The Wise Club team was making promotional posters.
Right.
But without a standard template, no real process, fixing simple typos became this huge, frantic last-minute scramble.
Classic startup problem, right? Small things snowballing because there's no system yet.
Exactly. Highlights the need for structure fast.
So, okay, tons of energy, loads of speakers, but also brewing chaos. How did they start to get a handle on it?
This is where they made a key move. The sources are very clear. They brought in Trello.
Ah, Trello, the digital board.
And Kanban methodology. They didn't just get the tool. They adopted the approach.
Okay, explain Kanban a bit more for people. It's more than just lists on Trello, right?
Definitely. Think of it as visualizing your workflow, seeing everything. But crucially, it's also about limiting how much you're trying to juggle at once.
Just not starting too many things.
Exactly. On their Trello board, it meant clear lists, speakers, seasons, tasks. Each task, like contacting a guest or researching something, was a card.
And you move the cards along.
Right. From to-do to doing, maybe blocked, and finally done. Just seeing that flow provides incredible clarity.
So what was the impact? Did it actually help them run the shows more smoothly?
Hugely, according to the sources. They credit Trello and Kanban with enabling, seamless collaboration. Everyone can see progress in real time.
Ah, transparency.
Big time. Staying organized, communicating better, delegating tasks. It built the foundation that let them run, 27 shows across 5 seasons?
Wow.
Yeah. A clear example of how even basic project management tools, when used well, can really help scale things up.
Now, the pandemic wasn't just causing chaos, it was also changing the whole environment they were working in.
Absolutely. They actually call it the COVID silver lining in one of the sources.
A silver lining. How so?
Well, suddenly, online meetings, webinars, everyone got used to them fast. Those speakers who signed up, they became pretty tech-savvy pretty quickly out of necessity.
Ah, okay. So the audience and the speakers were suddenly more comfortable with the online format.
Exactly. And these weren't just local folks. The sources mentioned speakers tuning in from all over.
Where from?
Canada, Dubai, Germany, London, Italy, the U.S. Really global. And these people were adjusting their schedules, sometimes drastically.
To fit the student organizer's time zone, that's dedication.
It really speaks volumes about the project, doesn't it? And they weren't just passive guests either.
No. How are they involved?
The sources really emphasized they were collaborators, open to what they called crazy ideas for formats, bringing their own insights. They called them brainstorming buddies.
So real partners in the process. That's cool.
Running 5 seasons, though. That implies a lot of learning along the way. How did they actually improve things based on experience?
Yeah, the sources point to continuous improvement being baked in, especially from season 3 onwards. They didn't just keep doing things the same way.
Makes sense. What kind of specific changes did they make?
Well, one big one was around engagement, especially during the live show. They started adding post-discussion segments after the main live stream finished.
Oh, interesting. Why?
It allowed for a deeper, maybe more relaxed dive with the speaker, plus dedicated time for audience questions without disrupting the main flow.
Smart. Keeps the main broadcast tight, but still allows for interaction. What about technical stuff? Always a gremlin in online events.
They tackled that directly, started scheduling mandatory 15-minute tech check-ins with every speaker before the talk.
Just to smooth things out.
Yeah, check connections, audio quality, trying to preempt those awkward "can you hear me" moments right at the start.
Good preventative measure. And the live environment itself. Big Zoom calls can get messy.
They streamlined that too. Implemented a crew-only Zoom call, meaning
Only the core production team was actually in the Zoom meeting during the live show. The audience watched via the streaming platform like YouTube.
so no random audience members accidentally unmuting or turning cameras on.
Exactly. Much less distraction for the team and the speaker. More focus.
And platform choices. Were they sticking to one thing?
No, they saw tech as a partner to leverage, moved to YouTube officially in season 3, specifically to reach a broader, more global audience.
And later.
Later seasons saw them using LinkedIn Live as well, trying to tap into that professional network, give speakers maybe a different kind of visibility.
So a real belief in trying new tools, experimenting, and constantly tweaking the process based on what worked.
They clearly put in a ton of effort, structure, adaptation, innovation.
Yeah.
But despite all that, and delivering what sounds like really high-quality content.
Yeah, the sources are clear. The alumni community consistently praised the content.
They still face some big hurdles.
Right. That viewership issue, it remains stubbornly low, which must have been, pretty frustrating.
Hugely frustrating for any creator pouring energy into something.
Absolutely. And that operational beast you mentioned, scheduling.
Still a challenge. Even with better tools like Trello, coordinating across all those time zones was just a constant effort.
Some problems just need ongoing management, I guess.
Seems so. And they were doing all this, it's important to remember, with pretty limited resources.
Right, no big budgets or huge support staff.
Exactly. But the sources emphasized they were still aiming for really high production standards, striving for excellence, even on a shoestring.
Okay, this striving for excellence, the process focus, it feels like a good point to connect back to those broader philosophies we mentioned, like Amazon's principles. How did they actually use those?
The sources say they consciously applied them, like customer obsession, but for them, the customer was both the audience and the guests.
How did that translate?
Earning and keeping trust through transparency, respect, treating everyone involved really well.
Makes sense. What else?
High standards. Definitely. They weren't just phoning it in. They set a high bar for the research quality, the questions they asked, the engagement level.
Even if viewership wasn't huge, the quality goal was high.
Right. And frugality. That was crucial given the limited resources, making the most of everything they had.
How does frugality work for a talk show?
Prioritizing impact. Focusing resources, time, energy on things like finding great speakers or crafting compelling narratives rather than, say, expensive graphics they couldn't afford anyway. Making smart choices.
Got it. And bias for action.
That comes through in how they tackled problems. Like the tech issues, they didn't just complain, they acted. They introduced the tech check-ins.
So, see a problem, implement a fix. Don't just talk about it.
Exactly. Constantly iterating and improving through doing. So yeah, they were actively trying to operationalize these big company principles on their own scale.
And you mentioned a Netflix echo, too.
Yeah, that idea of aiming to be great and always better. It's less a specific principle and more a cultural drive you see in places like Netflix. That constant push for self-reflection and improvement.
Which connects directly to their retrospectives, right?
Perfectly. We'll probably touch on that more.
Okay, so they've learned all this, faced challenges, applied principles, and then in 2023, the sources say the show hits the snooze button took a pause.
Yeah, a temporary but strategic pause.
Yeah.
And the reasons sound pretty familiar for the post-pandemic world.
Like what?
Well, life shifted back. In-person classes resumed, making scheduling tougher again. People just got busier. Finding speakers whose availability aligned became harder.
So that COVID silver lining kind of faded, replaced by new challenges.
Seems that way. The new normal brought its own hurdles, but they framed this break positively.
Not as giving up.
No, more like a strategic regrouping, a chance to step back, refine the format, maybe explore different platforms, and really curate an even stronger speaker lineup for when they return.
And the parent organization, GSARC, wasn't idle during this time.
Not at all. They kept busy, welcoming new team members, running global reunion events to keep the community vibe going, collaborating with other groups.
Keeping the momentum.
Yeah, and following up on other projects. They kept the organizational engine running.
And the plan is definitely a comeback.
Oh, yeah. The sources talk about a spectacular return planned for 2024, led by the new GSARC crew.
With a new focus, maybe. Especially considering that viewership challenge.
That seems to be the key shift. They're explicitly moving from just delivering content to really emphasizing audience engagement and community building.
Trying to tackle that low viewership head-on by fostering connection.
Exactly. Making the audience feel more a part of it, more involved. It's a deliberate, strategic pivot.
Did they see any positive signs during the break? Anything to build on?
They did mention the GCT YouTube channel grew organically to 1.6K subscribers, so there's clearly an interested base there.
Something to work with.
Definitely. And the sources end that section with a call to action, asking the community for support. Spread the word, join the conversation when it relaunches.
It really shines through, doesn't it? This thread of constant learning and evolution, right from the messy start to this planned comeback.
Absolutely. And it's not just accidental learning. It's formalized in what they call a core practice, the retrospective session after every single season.
Actually sitting down and picking things apart.
Exactly. A dedicated time to, rewind, reflect honestly what worked, what didn't, why, and crucially, identify concrete areas for improvement.
What kind of things do they analyze?
Everything, it sounds like. Speaker selection, platform choices. Were the discussion segments effective? Did the tech checks help? Engagement tools, even looking at potential new platforms or formats.
That sounds, very thorough, like how successful teams operate.
It really does. Asking the tough questions. Did that new segment really boost engagement? Did the crew-only Zoom actually reduce stress? Did LinkedIn bring the right viewers?
Using data and feedback to drive change.
Precisely. All feeding into this constant cycle of adapting, innovating, refining. The goal always being, as the sources put it, to deliver the best possible experience, fostering meaningful dialogue, building connections, helping everyone grow. It's that great and always better drive in action. So if we step back and look at this whole deep dive, we've traced quite a path from that chaotic but energetic pandemic start.
Right, the random calls and poster panic.
Through bringing in vital structure with tools like Trello and Kanban, adapting constantly to the global remote world, implementing specific hard-won innovations season after season.
Tech checks, post discussions.
Facing down those tough realities like low viewership, taking that calculated strategic pause, consciously applying those powerful principles from organizations like Amazon, customer obsession, high standards, and now planning this comeback focused squarely on community building.
Yeah, the core lessons really jump out and they feel so broadly applicable. The power of structure when you're starting out, the absolute need for adaptability, the huge value in continuous improvement, that reflective practice, and maybe surprisingly, the leverage you get from applying clear principles, even if you're not a huge corporation.
And these aren't just, abstract business school concepts. Think about how a bit of Kanban could help you manage your next side project, or how that bias for action could get you unstuck on something.
Totally. This story makes those ideas feel very real, very human scale.
It really does. It shows how these principles actually play out.
Thinking about their whole story, especially that tension between the high-quality content they produced and the struggle for viewership, what feels like the trickiest balance they had to navigate?
What's really striking is how perfectly GCT Talks illustrates this universal challenge for pretty much anyone creating anything today.
Which is?
It's that tension between pouring intense effort into making something genuinely good, high-quality content, which they clearly did,
Right.
and putting in the equally vital but maybe different kind of effort needed to build real audience engagement,
Yeah.
to build a community around it.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? What does it actually take? It's one thing to get eyeballs, but another thing entirely to build a community, not just an audience that consumes, but a group that feels connected, that participates, that actually, wants that deeper interaction.
Exactly. And that's the core challenge GCT Talks is now explicitly setting out to master with their comeback. It's a fascinating question, and honestly, one worth pondering for anyone trying to create something meaningful and connect with people today.